How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. I'm delighted to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, if you would, please text the word donate to 33777. And you can donate to help families at Thanksgiving this year. We have partnered with Hungry for a Day nationwide, feeding families. We are close to having 1,000 supporters on this. We're at 964 donations right now. We're getting close to 1,000. If you would, we're running a little behind last year. Last year, we raised over $300,000. We're a little bit behind this year. We're hoping to pick up. So if you text donate to 33777, I would appreciate it. We got to talk about China. One of the things that I enjoy doing, one of the things that I think I should do as a conservative radio show host is not just give you the politics of the here and now. There's a lot of other stuff to talk about, like raising money for people for food for Thanksgiving, but also talking about the world around us, because we live in a very global, interactive world. And I think there is a strain now on the right in the United States that has spun off from the left that forgets how interconnected the world is. So, for example, if you want to be reminded of how interconnected the world is and how absurd some government policies can be, the United States government has set to fine a number of Italian pasta makers for dumping pasta in the United States. Now, what is dumping? Dumping is when you flood a market and allegedly underprice other people. You're accused of dumping. It actually means Americans can buy cheap pasta. This is not a Trump thing, by the way. This started during the Biden administration. It's just the bureaucracy. So 12 pasta makers in Italy who make real Italian pasta in Italy are going to be fined for dumping pasta in the United States, driving up the cost so much it's going to drive them out of business. Do you know why they were able to sell pasta so cheaply in the United States? Because they were buying wheat from North Dakota. And the North Dakota wheat was cheap. In fact, a lot of Italian pasta these days is actually made with durum wheat from North Dakota. Durum wheat is a hard wheat. Most wheat in the United States is a softer wheat. The durum wheat grown in North Dakota is very comparable to the wheat grown in Italy and in Ukraine, where they can't buy wheat from now for obvious reasons. So the Italians have been buying the North Dakota wheat. They've been able to make their pasta cheaper, send it to the United States at cheap prices. The domestic pasta manufacturers in the United States are outraged at the Italian pasta flowing in and got the Commerce Department to punish the Italians, who will now not buy wheat from the North Dakota farmers. We live in an interconnected world. One of those bits of interconnectivity comes with China as well, as we get so much from China. And there is a lot of economic data out there to suggest the Chinese are in a very not good economic situation. And it is a situation, in fact, that we could capitalize on. The Atlantic has a story that the EV market in China is exploding. In China, you could buy a heavily discounted used electric car that has never, in fact, been used. Chinese automakers, desperate to meet their sales targets in a bitterly competitive market, sell cars to dealerships, which register them as sold, even though no actual customer has bought them. Dealers stuck with officially sold cars then offload them as used, often at low prices. The practice has become so prevalent, the Chinese Communist Party is trying to stop it. Its main newspaper, the People's Daily, complained earlier this year that this sales inflating tactic disrupts normal market order and criticized companies for their data worship. This sign of serious problems in China's electric vehicle industry may come as a surprise to many Americans. The Chinese electric car has become a symbol of the country's seemingly unstoppable rise on the world stage. Many observers point to their growing popularity as evidence that China is winning the race to dominate new technologies. But in China, these electric cars represent something entirely different. The profound threats that Beijing's meddling in markets poses in both China and the rest of the world. That's data point one. Data point two. This from the New York Times. China's nuclear forces are expanding quickly, yet behind that rise, the top leader, Xi Jinping's sweeping purge of generals and military leaders has exposed deep-seated corruption and raised questions about the country's ability to manage its growing arsenal. The uncertainty adds to concerns about a new era of volatility in global nuclear politics, as President Trump has called for renewed U.S. testing and as Washington is pushing through major changes in its military. President Trump's Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has fired or sidelined at least 24 generals and admirals over the past 9 months, actions that are without precedent in recent decades and have come with little explanation. The shakeup has raised fears of growing political interference in a military that has long prided itself in being apolitical. In Beijing, Mr. Xi's purges in the People's Liberation Army cut far deeper. He's carried out a cleanup that has shaken the rocket force, the branch that oversees nuclear forces, and is crucial to Xi's ambitions to build a world-class military by 2049. Top commanders have disappeared. Others have been jailed. Defense contractors have been stripped of party titles and detained for investigations. Early in his rule, Mr. Xi warned that the Soviet Union collapsed because the party lost control of its military and no real man had stepped forward, noted Joseph Torigian, an associate professor at American University who studied Chinese leadership. His military purges likely reflect his obsession with preparing for worst-case scenarios at home and abroad, whether it is protests over economic policy or political suppression or needing to fight the United States in a war over Taiwan, the democratically governed island Beijing claims as a territory. Mr. Xi thinks materialism and corruption are a direct threat to the military's ability to defeat enemies. In Xi's mind, it makes members of the military vulnerable to Western infiltration, whether literally in terms of becoming an agent or because Western values lead to a desire to nationalize the military and split from party control. Now, one of the interesting things here is that what the New York Times is trying to do is to compare what Trump is doing to the American military to what Xi is doing to the Chinese military. The reality, however, is that what Xi is doing is he's not purging the wokes who don't want to fight. That's what Pete Hegseth is doing. He's purging a lot of the intellectual academic military figures who actually don't have battlefield experience. What Xi is trying to do is purge people who are independent thinkers. That's not what Hegseth is doing. Hegseth actually does want independent thinkers in the military. Xi wants people under his control. Now, how on earth is the electric vehicle situation in China comparable to the purges of the military? That, my friends, is what I am here for, to explain these things to you. In China, the Central Planning Committee of the Communist Party is in charge of everything. They are in charge of the military, and they are in charge of business. And they are worried about prices in the electric car industry in China. They're worried about prices in food industries in China. They've stopped producing regular, reliable public data because of concerns that they can't make the Chinese economy look better than it actually is. The president of China is also purging the military. because he's afraid that in the military there have been rumors of dissatisfaction with the current leadership. Xi has overstayed his tenure in office. He served longer than anyone since Mao. And a number of people in the Politburo are suggesting this probably is not a good thing. Now, here's another data point. This is from Bloomberg. Beijing officials call China's current deflationary malaise involution, a destructive cycle of intense self-destroying business competition sparked by excess capacity. Yang Zhifeng calls it something else, twisted. The 24-year-old who has drifted from one low-paid job to another since graduating college 2 years ago, is living in the reality of a deflationary spiral that Bloomberg News analysis found looks even deeper than what the official numbers show. Using data on almost 70 everyday products and services from multiple sources, the analysis showed prices dropped more sharply than the headline Consumer Price Index indicates, especially for goods that ordinary consumers buy. Yang is both a victim and perpetrator of this vicious cycle. With job prospects looking slim, she opened a cocktail stall earlier this year but had to close it just 3 months later. Discounts from food delivery platforms, drinks for a few cents, wiped her out. She considered going back to a factory job she had 5 years ago that used to pay about $980 a month, only to find it now pays just $630 a month. With money tight, she spends $1.40 or less on meals bought from the same delivery platforms that forced her out of competition. I've become the kind of consumer who destroys businesses like mine, she said. She's just one example out of many where falling prices are hurting the bottom line. Deflation signals a lopsided economy where supply dwarfs demand. That hurts companies, which in turn hurts workers. As consumption weakens, businesses spend less, economic activity slows, debt burdens rise, which then cause deflation, more deflation. The downward loop, known in economics as a deflationary spiral, feeds on itself once entrenched, and it can have global implications. Cheap Chinese exports can depress prices abroad, strain relations with trading partners, create knock-on effects for multinational companies. Global institutions are sounding the alarm, with the International Monetary Fund projecting consumer inflation in China will average 0 this year, the second lowest of nearly 200 economies it tracks. The Bank of Korea warned in July that China could export deflation to its trading partners, and the problem could be even worse than we realize. China's official figure, which offers limited item-level detail and is shaped by a complex methodology that isn't transparent, has hovered around 0 since 2023. Bloomberg analyzed prices for dozens of products in 36 major cities, as well as both official and private data across China, to get a sense of how much cheaper things have become. And guess what? It finds that on average, 51 of the 67 items dropped in price over the last 2 years. Now, this is where our tariffs come in handy. And if the president's team has any sense about them, they will get rid of tariffs on our trading partners, and they will tariff the hell out of China, because we have an opportunity to knock China further. China is declining. You know, I pulled up data the other day, and it showed that the Chinese economy had surpassed the American economy. The CIA World Book and the International Monetary Fund, they both had numbers showing China's economy now producing more gross domestic product than ours. Then it turns out they hadn't updated the figures in 2 years, and there was a blip during the COVID era when that was true, and China has declined so remarkably now, China may never be able to match our economy. You have turmoil in the Chinese military. You have turmoil in the Chinese consumer product index. You have turmoil in the Chinese banking sector. You have massive turmoil in the Chinese real estate sector. The United States needs to stand up right now and aggressively tariff China, undo the tariffs on everybody else, develop better trading relationships with our other partners, and cost China everything. We have an opportunity right now to hit the Chinese in the pocketbook in a way that will impact their military development, the costs of their military, and potentially oust Xi Jinping. You know what the Chinese are doing? I'm kidding you not. You know what Xi Jinping is doing? He's seeding the rumors in the Western press that, well, if you replace me, the people who replace me would be even more hostile to your interests. They want to invade Taiwan tomorrow. Things literally, I get this from people. I read that the replacements for Xi are even worse. The whole reason the Politburo is turning on Xi Jinping is they think that his quest to take over Taiwan is destroying their economy. It's time for us to help destroy the Chinese economy. They're not our friend. They're our enemy. We should treat them as such. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. 877-973-7425 is the phone number should you wish to be on the program. I want to give you a word to text data to 33777. Text data to 33777 or data, whichever way you want to say it, data or data to 33777. Follow the link. You get a discount on the paid subscription to the daily show notes. But if you want the free option, it doesn't matter. Every subscriber is going to get my holiday recipe guide. We will push it out probably the end of this week, beginning of next week. It's got all the basic recipes. I mean, the pumpkin pie, the sweet potato pie, how I do my turkey, how I make my gravy, the salads, the mac and cheese, the cornbread dressing. It's got all the good recipes. It's even got recipes for breakfast. If you got a family that's coming, it's got my French toast casserole and sausage egg bake recipes in there. And I'm going to compile all these into an actual cookbook. I have been working on a cookbook. I have gotten about 100 or so recipes. I got to worry about the photography and all of that stuff, but I'm working on the cookbook now. You people have wanted a cookbook, so I'm going to do a cookbook. That's my next book. I will not write a single other book, Philip, Bill, until the cookbook is done. I'll figure out how to do it. I mentioned it to the publisher of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and he's like, maybe we should help you with the cookbook. Maybe you should, because I don't know anything about doing a cookbook other than I know how to cook and write recipes and eat. So stand by for that. But if you text data to 33777, you can subscribe. You get a good discount on the paid subscription, so you get all the show notes. Or if you just want the freebie, that's fine. I'm going to send the recipe guide to everybody, as I do every year, who wants it, on how to cook all the great holiday recipes, because cooking is something I know how to do. I got to figure out if my father-in-law wants me to do the turkey this year or not. I need to ask him. That'd be bad if he thinks I'm doing it and he hasn't told me to do it, and then I don't do it and there's no turkey for things. This is a problem. I got to work on this. Okay. I'm sorry. Kobe, you told me where I'm going next, but I was suddenly worried about smoking a turkey for Thanksgiving on the Rec Tech, by the way. Okay, so AFPvolunteer.com. That is the website. If you would like to go to the website, you can sign up with Americans for Prosperity, and you can be way more plugged in than all your other friends. So what makes AFP unique? Well, it's the largest grassroots group in the country. It happens to fight for common sense conservative reforms. It has chapters in every state. When you get involved with Americans for Prosperity, you don't just get knowledge about common sense conservative reforms that are being advanced at your state level and your local level, but also at the federal level. They also teach you how to get involved. So, for example, you can learn how to knock on neighbors' doors and explain to them what's in the legislature, or try to get them out to vote in an election, try to explain to them why our side is right on these issues. Or you can learn how to just show up at your local school board or city council or your state legislature and press for these common sense conservative reforms. You can make a difference in shaping public policy in the country by going to AFPvolunteer.com, AFPvolunteer.com. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson. Delighted to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I would love to have you. Now, I actually do want to go to the phones here. I want to go to Philip calling from Boca Raton, Florida. You're going to be up next. Welcome.
Thank you very much for speaking to me. Here's what I think the Republicans ought to propose. You got to split the problem into two pieces: universal, catastrophic, and free market, everything else. Because you split it that way, if you put out a big enough pool, catastrophic insurance goes down by the law of large numbers. And that's what everybody's really concerned about. I'm concerned about a heart attack that I can't afford, or some kind of medical transplant that I can't afford. Ordinary treatments I can manage under my budget, but the other ones I can't. So you want to split it and spread it. Spread one and leave the other for the free market to operate. Now, the advantage of that is what the definition of universal catastrophic is a political question, so the politicians can fight over it. Mm-hmm. So they got their brownie points by fighting. But otherwise, it may be a viable solution. So it takes what people's needs and leaves the other for the free market to operate.
Okay, you make a really good point that I've actually heard a number of conservative free market supporters point out, is that if everybody has a baseline for catastrophic coverage, and that is you're injured, you're diagnosed with cancer, you've got a government backup plan for you. But for your basic, I got a cold, I'm sick, I got an injury, I need to go to the hospital. People should be able to have their free market health care. You know, one of the problems, Philip, that gets to your point, I don't think people realize, is that if you're a man in the United States on Obamacare, part of your cost of Obamacare is related to you having to deal with your pregnancy that you're never going to get because you're a man, and yet you've still got to pay for pregnancy. And if you're a woman and you pay for Obamacare, part of your cost goes to your prostate coverage and potential for you getting prostate cancer that you're never going to get, and your testicular cancer for that matter. And it was the bizarre way they structured Obamacare, where men have to cover pregnancy and women have to cover prostate and testicular cancer so that they could spread out the cost to everyone. And then they piled in that you've got to cover all of these additional things that you shouldn't necessarily have to cover. I'm never going to get pregnant. Why do I need to have pregnancy coverage in my health care? Well, thanks to Obamacare, I do. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, if we have a baseline for catastrophic coverage, and again, let's figure out what catastrophic coverage is, that might be something. But, the free market does lower costs. The free market improves most of what it touches. Think about education. Every single state that has school choice has better education outcomes than states that don't have school choice. That is a indisputable fact. States like Florida that have major school choice programs have high school graduates who do better than states like California that don't have a free market school choice program. And that has nothing to do, that transcends demographics. Poor Hispanics in Florida compared to California, poor blacks in Florida compared to California, poor whites in Florida compared to California, rich Hispanics, across the board. Demographically, it doesn't matter. Florida has better education outcomes because it has robust school choice. Healthcare is an issue where Republicans have got to have some answers. My company sent out a memo the other day. It is now open enrollment at my company. And I actually sent a note to the head of HR and just said, I appreciate all of the work that you guys are doing to manage the situation, because I know it's difficult. And we have great healthcare insurance. I worry a little bit that if our company is ever sold, we might lose the great insurance we have. And the HR gets a lot of flack for a lot of stuff, but fighting the battle on healthcare and trying to save money and balance the costs, I'm willing to pay more. We have really good healthcare coverage. My wife's chemo pill that she takes every day costs $22,000 a month. $22,000 a month. And our out-of-pocket after $2,200 for a year, we're taken care of. That's remarkable. And the negotiation rate between the insurance company and the pharmaceutical company, all that, it's way over my head. What I know, though, is that my company, because of its size, can get more accessible insurance for its employees than my radio LLC, where I only have 4 or 5 employees, where I can't give health care because I would be out of business tomorrow. I wouldn't have the money. And economies of scale matter, but I can't partner with other companies around the country to offer the economies of scale that a big company can get because of the healthcare regulations in this country. And there are certainly, now, you've got the Christian Medishare plans and stuff. And I thought about doing that for my company, but when you look at the fine print on some of that stuff, it's good for individuals, not necessarily for companies. And some individuals, particularly small business owners and stuff, they do it. But there are ceilings that, in my wife's case, she and I couldn't do it because we would hit the ceiling after just a couple of years. with her health. So that's not an option. There just aren't good insurance options in this country. And here's the problem I have, and this is my alarm. If Republicans don't come up with free market solutions and genuinely embrace the free market's ability to drive down costs, you're going to have a lot of people in this country who embrace socialism. Obamacare was designed not to be affordable. They called it the affordable. It's like the Democrats called the Inflation Reduction Act, and it did nothing to reduce inflation. The Democrats are calling the health care in this country, they're calling it the Affordable Care Act, and it was designed to not be affordable. The Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, was actually designed to break the health care system. And you're a fool if you forget that. That's the way the Democrats designed it, because their thinking, and they may be right on this, their thinking was that when it breaks, people are going to want to break from free market health care. And they're going to want socialism. They're going to want universal health care. They fantasize about Great Britain, and they fantasize about Scotland, they fantasize about Canada. Those are nations that are way more homogenous than us, way smaller than us. And by the way, their healthcare systems are overwhelmed and wait times are through the roof. My wife went to the doctor yesterday for her scans. Her scans were good. Her doctor wants her to see an endocrinologist. She's got an appointment for endocrinology in the next week, along with an MRI. If she were in Scotland or Canada or England, it could be months, if not a year, to wait. In Canada, they tell you, well, you can go see the endocrinologist in 2 years, or here's a coupon to pay for your assisted suicide. What do you want? We should not want socialist healthcare in this country that prioritizes the elimination of citizens to ease up the burden on the wait list. You hear all the horror stories about the VA. You hear horror stories from veterans all the time about the VA. And the Democrats' solution is to put every American in the VA. We shouldn't want that. But we got to come up with a way as a party, as an ideology, to support a healthcare system that actually helps most Americans, that doesn't cause us to go bankrupt. The burden on small businesses that can't fund. I feel bad on a regular basis that I can't afford health care for my employees. I don't like that I can't afford health care for my employees. I would be willing to take the hit personally to be able to cover their health care, but it's still too expensive for me to do. I'll give up my dream of flying private to be able to get insurance for my employees, but it doesn't matter. It's not going to happen because of the cost with our revenue. And I know way too many small businesses who are in the same boat. There are a lot of companies that want to take care of their employees and can't because of the costs. And that's on the federal government because Obamacare drove up those costs. You're hearing about the massive surges in healthcare costs in this country. That's Obamacare causing it. And it's unfortunate. It is detrimental to our future, and it's something the GOP needs a plan to deal with. They need a plan to deal with the economy. They need a plan to get rid of tariffs. I mean, I want to go back to the president with Laura Ingraham. He said he's cutting the tariff on coffee to bring down the price. The president has said repeatedly tariffs were not to blame for high prices, and that if anything, tariffs were helping prices in this country. If that's the case, why are you cutting the tariff? If the tariffs did not contribute to high prices, why will cutting the tariff decrease the price of coffee? It makes no sense unless you acknowledge the tariffs are raising prices. And Americans routinely show they want low prices. You can say, if you will just suck it up and take the pain right now. This is essentially the message that the Republicans have had for some time. If you will just suck it up, deal with the pain. We're going to rebuild manufacturing. We're going to bring jobs back to the country. You just got to deal with the pain. Americans don't want pain. That's always been the foolish aspect of this economic plan to rebuild manufacturing in this country is Americans want cheap stuff. I want cheap stuff. You want cheap stuff. It's all well and good for you to say, well, I buy only made in America. No, you don't, because half the stuff you buy in America is made with foreign parts. I buy only American. Where is your American-made cell phone? Where is it? Where does your made in the USA cell phone exist? You just bought the cheap Android that was made in South Korea in a sweatshop because you didn't want to buy an iPhone. Americans want cheap stuff. You want cheap stuff. Tariffs have caused things to not be cheap, to repatriate manufacturing to the country in a way that has a repatriated manufacturing. Americans want cheap health care. Obamacare was designed to drive up the cost of health care. There are fixes out there. There are people who have solutions to drive down the cost of health care by deploying free market solutions. And the Republicans are scared of doing what needs to be done. I got to tell you, we got to have solutions to these problems, or the young are going to get frustrated and believe that no one has a solution except the Bernie Sanders and the AOCs of the world. And that's going to be a disaster for all of us. It's going to be disastrous for everybody if young Americans decide socialism is what works. Because socialism doesn't work. And everywhere socialism has been tried, it's failed. As George Will has famously said, every 25 years or so, Americans have to have an experiment in socialism to remind themselves why they don't like it. And I would prefer us to put off the pain as long as possible, because I don't particularly want us to have to be reminded why socialism fails, because it might be too late once the socialists get in power to ever get power back from them. We've got to rethink what's going on in this country, and we got an opportunity to do it while we control the House, the Senate, and the White House. We've got another reconciliation package we can do to get things past the Democratic filibuster, but they got to put some real thought into this. They've got to put real thought into it to get it done, because otherwise I'm afraid people are going to make some poor choices thinking those choices help them. Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson. So Sean Duffy, I really like Sean Duffy. I disagree with him on trying to block Isaacman from being the NASA director, but Duffy's a great guy. He's a Green Bay Packers fan. I mean, he and his whole family are decent people. And a reporter confronted Sean Duffy. He was at Chicago's O'Hare Airport and asked him if he flew private to that airport, and he was having none of it.
Did I fly here on a private? I wish. By the way, had I flown on a private plane, I would not have landed here at O'Hare, because we have restrictions at LAX, Seattle, Denver, O'Hare, Boston, Newark, JFK, Atlanta, Dallas. You can't fly a private aircraft into those airports, the top 12. With some small exceptions to that rule, you can't fly in a private aircraft. So no one's flying in here, but for those small exceptions. We've reduced private jet travel or general aviation by 10%, as well as if there are delays in the system, cancellations in the system, we've also put in restrictions that say commercial aircraft take a priority. The private jet travel would have to go to a different airport. So we are prioritizing the commercial traveler, the people who are coming through this airport. Now, I flew in on American Airlines from Wausau, Wisconsin today. I flew on Delta last night from D.C. So no, I'm a commercial flyer.
Good for him. He also hung out in the terminal at O'Hare with Philadelphia Eagles fans, though he is a Green Bay Packers fan, and the Eagles beat him in Green Bay. So he's a decent human being. I thought it was very funny, the reporter asking him if he flew private. You know he knew better than to fly private. You know he knew better than to fly private. Of course. He wasn't going to get ambushed. By the way, there was actually a report out that the White House and the FBI are both complaining about Kash Patel continually flying private instead of flying commercial. He's flying private all over the place, and there are all sorts of questions about him doing that. The White House not exactly thrilled with his performance lately, in part because he has tweeted a few things that may have tipped off potential people that the FBI was coming for him and they got out of Dodge. So Sean Duffy's doing it right. I really like him. Rubio's Brooke Rollins at Ag, Scott Bessent at Treasury. The president's he's surrounded by some great people. I just hope he listens to them. If Bessent could just privately whisper in his ear and say, hey, maybe we need to do something about the tariffs differently, that would be great. The problem is he's got a Democrat, Kennedy, and HHS, so we're going to get screwed up on healthcare one way or the other. Just not good. Nonetheless, Duffy is a good guy. So while this is happening, most of us are freezing. I got my heater on in my office today because it's cold here in the South. Miami had record-setting low temperatures the other day. Meanwhile, they're having a climate conference in Brazil where they're lamenting that no one cares about global warming and that we need to start censoring people who challenge the conventional wisdom on corporate. You notice how these guys on global warming, they can't win the debate. First, it was global warming. Then they had to call it climate change. Now they're saying, oh, we got to censor people. We got to censor people. You shouldn't have to censor people. You just can't win the debate because people aren't buying your agenda. Maybe it's time to give up and move on, but there's too much money in the climate change industry for them to give up. They're complaining about Donald Trump's misinformation and disinformation on climate change while we're all cold here. Now, let me tell you about Hillsdale College. They have some great classes you can take and improve your mind. EricForHillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, EricForHillsdale.com. You go sign up with Hillsdale College. You take one of their fantastic classes. You've got 40 to choose from. They're all incredible classes done by Hillsdale's great faculty, 30-minute videos. Depending on the class you take, depends on the number of videos, but each episode is 30 minutes long. You do it at your own pace. You get a certificate of completion when you're done. It's EricForHillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, EricForHillsdale.com. Guys, they're really incredible. The class on capitalism, we should make every member of Congress take it. The one on the American Revolution and the colonial period of the country, fantastic. C.S. Lewis, Shakespeare, they got classes on them as well. Economics, chemistry, math, you name it. Go to Eric, E-R-I-C-K, EricForHillsdale.com. Surely there's a topic you're interested in. You'll improve your mind. It's education, not indoctrination. EricForHillsdale.com.